So we're going to jump to this next story, and I hate to do this because it's just it's kind of
if you hate to do it, you don't have to. We won't make you.
I think we do, and so we have this story from Digital Music News. They say Spotify employees threaten to strike if Joe Rogan podcasts aren't edited or removed.
What?
So there's been an ongoing thing with the Rogan podcast, which to Joe is probably more of a like mosquito on his arm that he swats away and ignores, but it has been relevant to those who are active in cultural politics and the digital space. So particularly, space that like I'm in. I hate to constantly be bringing up Joe because they're the ones bringing him up.
I love bringing up Joe, man.
It's a little tabloidy because the first thing I want to say is, bring on the criticism. I get it. Talking about Joe all the time. He is the biggest podcast in the world with like the biggest podcast deal ever. He's the OG. And now when the culture war comes for him to repeatedly in these stories, I think it is particularly relevant because it's going to trickle down on everybody else. What is going on with these podcasts and what we need to pay attention to. So as much as I want to be like, we get it, Spotify employees repeatedly are pushing these stories to try and come after Joe. This one to me was like another example of the danger of the minority threatening to destroy things that are extremely popular and potentially even having an impact. So I don't know if to what extent you've heard this. I think you knew about this, Ian, that a bunch of episodes didn't make it.
Onto Spotify.
Yeah.
Whose episodes did they refuse to put up
Alex Jones,
there?
Gavin McInnes,
Really?
Smiley Yiannopoulos, Carl Benjamin.
And Joe, I think, made a statement that it was a clerical error.
Oh, that's insane. Also, I don't know. I guess I'll
Joe's
give
statement.
Joe the benefit of the doubt. But on top of that, too, Carl Benjamin, Sargon is so much less controversial than any of the other names you threw out there. And I'm not saying those podcasts should have been banned either, but it's funny.
Carl has his moments.
That's fair.
When I was on Rogan's show with the Twitter people, and they were talking about why they banned him and started reading some of the things he said.
Oh,
Carl actually messaged me, and he was like, he was laughing, and he was like, "You're probably saying like, oh, Carl, what have you done?"
Yeah. No. Okay. Fair enough. I'm not familiar with his Twitter, but it's crazy to me that they would refuse to allow him to upload streams he did with any of those people, but especially, I don't know, I always just saw Sargon to be a lot less controversial than those other people, but maybe I don't follow him closely enough.
Did Spotify nuke those episodes, or was there a clerical error? I thought I read that Joe said that it was an error, that they didn't get uploaded properly.
So why would that pattern seem to exist?
I know, it seems like a pattern.
Why would the Alex Jones episode, one of the biggest episodes, had like 15 million views in a day? I don't think Joe's a liar.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and I can't confirm the statement. I just thought I heard.
But hold on, it could be legit. It could be that those are the ones YouTube corrupted.
That's possible.
To get more conspiratorial.
Maybe, yeah. I have no idea.
I'm interested in what his contract was with Spotify. I would have imagined when he signed with them, he was like, "I have total freedom. You're not going to touch any of my stuff, and everything's going up.
Yeah.
You in? Okay, let's go."
And I can't imagine he would do anything but that. I don't know Joe Rogan as a person. I've never spoken to him, but based on who he is on the podcast, it would shock me if there wasn't something in the contract to ensure that he had full creative freedom.
There's tricks. There's a lot of tricks. Let me read this so we'll see what this is all about, and then we'll talk about it. So Digital Music News reports a contingent of activist Spotify staffers are now considering a walkout or full-blown strike if their demands for direct editorial oversight of the Joe Rogan Experience podcasts aren't met. Last week, we first reported that Spotify employees were demanding direct editorial oversight over the recently acquired Joe Rogan Experience podcast. That would include the ability to directly edit or remove sections of upcoming interviews, or block the uploading of episodes deemed problematic. The employees also demanded the ability to add trigger warnings, corrections, and references to fact-check articles on topics discussed by Rogan in the course of his multi-hour discussions. Some of the group's demands have already been met by Spotify management, though a refusal to allow further changes is stirring talk of a high-profile walkout or strike, according to preliminary plans shared with Digital Music News. The strike would principally involve New York-based Spotify employees and would be accompanied by protests outside Spotify's Manhattan headquarters. Other aspects would involve media appearances and coordination with other activist organizations. For Spotify, the decision to offer some concessions may have only emboldened demands for wide-scale editorial oversight. During the transition of Rogan's podcast episodes onto the Spotify platform, multiple past episodes were omitted. Those included interviews with Smiley Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, and Alex Jones. Additionally, Rogan issued a rare public apology and correction over his claim that left-wing anarchists had set fires in Oregon, a point that was made during a recent interview with Douglas Murray. The apology is now believed to be the result of pressure from Spotify staffers. But those measures apparently don't go far enough. Rogan's claim during the Murray podcast is still part of the podcast recording, despite demands that the offending section will be removed or directly corrected within the audio itself. It now appears that Spotify is unwilling to directly edit or otherwise alter any existing episodes, with content alteration considered a bright line that shouldn't be crossed. That episode on Facebook right now is flagged as fake news.
Wow. All right. So
if you link the YouTube video, a thing appears saying false information, and it's a whole podcast. So from that one thing Joe said,
I wouldn't mind if he put a little cut in there and added like, "Hey guys, by the way, what I'm about to say is really ignorant. Here it is.
Nah.
This is the reason it's ignorant."
That's insane.
Even that.
How many wrong
heck?
things have we said in this podcast? How many wrong things have we said?
Right.
Every time I open my mouth.
500.
Every time I open
that's
my
like
mouth.
so high profile that we would have to go back and look at it.
When I'm not, like if I can even get a sentence out, it's usually incorrect. So
But
you to even have me on
listen.
But no, in all seriousness, I hear what you're saying. What you said though, I think that would be fine for Joe to do if he wanted to do
if
that.
he wants to.
Because I've done
I
that
don't
too, right? Like I've uploaded videos and then noticed that there was a little error with it, and then taken it down, redone it, or just cut that part out and then re-uploaded it. Because sometimes I feel that there's a
You might be able
responsibility to do that.
To edit it while it's online without having taken it down. I don't
You
know
can
how
do
good
that.
the tech is.
YouTube can do that.
You can do that on YouTube now?
Yes.
How long have you been able to do that for?
Long time.
Because I'm an idiot. I totally pulled something down
Years, I
and sliced
think.
it out, and I probably get it. I tried to look for that feature though, and I couldn't find it anywhere.
It's called split. You go in and you go split and you go doop, and you can trim the edges and you can pull things out. It takes a really long time to do. Like it could take like 2 days for it to finally process. 'Cause
Interesting.
You're doing it through the cloud and whatever.
I remember attempting to do it, but there were some weird issues. It was like the cut had to be much longer than the one that I wanted to make. But that's neither here nor there.
I got to read this because it's funny. Digital Music News says, if a walkout strike moves forward, it could be risky for the staffers involved. Other corporations have certainly witnessed walkouts and even full-blown strikes by activist employees for a range of grievances. Those protests have often been met with changes. Though the employment landscape has changed dramatically in 2020, Spotify employees reportedly enjoy comfortable salaries in the $120,000 to $130,000 annual range, with considerable perks and benefits. These are plum jobs in extremely uncertain economic times, making a strike a risky move. It also appears that Spotify management, including CEO Daniel Ek, has a limited tolerance for the mutiny on deck. Accordingly, Digital Music News has learned that Spotify clearly shared its decision on the Schreier episode and has declined continued demands to edit or remove other episodes. So that's Abigail Schreier. She wrote a book about transgender youth, and I think something that's called, I believe it's called Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria. Correct?
Yeah, she wrote this book called Irreparable Damage: How the Transgender Thing is ruining our daughters' lives.
And
yeah.
Joe was one of the few people who actually was willing. Like, I mean, I'm surprised he even did the interview, to be honest.
It was a good interview.
Good for him.
And it goes against the mainstream orthodoxy, and that's why they're freaking out. They say the reason X pushback is somewhat obvious. Joe Rogan's entire identity revolves around unfiltered discussion and opinion, and audiences could abandon the podcast if it becomes censored or controlled. Earlier this year, Spotify lured Rogan into an exclusive relationship with an estimated $100 million deal. So if you're an employee who makes $100K and you go and say, I'm going to strike unless we get to make these changes, what do you think that guy's going to say? Should I lose one employee or $100 million contract?
Exactly.
Buddy, the door is right behind you.
Dude, that's exactly what I was thinking.
But hold on. Here's where it gets fun. What if the employees now claim being in a work environment where they hear sexist, racist, and transphobic content is a violation of their civil rights under the Civil Rights Act? They say it's discrimination for me to have to work on content that says these things. That's been the big advantage. That's been the big manipulation the left has used, arguing that their political cause is actually protected. So what the New York Times did is they started tweeting out all of when it was Tom Cotton, right? Tom Cotton, the Send in the Troops article.
Yeah.
Tom Cotton wrote an article, an op-ed. Send in the troops, called for the Insurrection Act to shut down the riots. So New York Times employees started tweeting, the New York Times is endangering black bodies, or something to that effect.
Where did that phrase come from? They start saying black bodies instead of black people. I've heard this
I
multiple
think
times.
it's a reference to that they are white supremacists who don't view them as human beings, just like animate corpses walking around.
A black
so
body
then why are you saying it though? You know what I mean? Like why are
No,
they
I'm
saying
dragging
No, I know.
them.
No. I know why you're saying it. I'm saying like why? Because I've seen left-wing people use this phrase. Like, if they think that represents white supremacists not seeing black people as humans, like, then why are they using this term?
No. I was being facetious.
I know you were. They
don't actually believe saying black body is a reference to white supremacy.
No, I've seen this. Oh, why do they say it then?
I don't have no idea. It's a social justice thing.
Okay,
I was dragging them.
Okay. I thought that you were using
calling
the phrase
them
racist.
racist.
That's my bad.
But listen, I don't want to
tell you what a black body is for real. It's a
scientific
scientific thing that absorbs all light.
Oh,
sure. I don't want to
piece.
derail off of what's going on with the New York Times. They used the idea that the New York Times was discriminating against black people as a way to force the company to take down the op-ed, and ultimately the editor resigned. They are using civil rights law, and they are claiming, well, if there is content that I have to listen to because I work at this company, that is discriminatory against me and my beliefs and who I am. And now the Supreme Court has ruled that you can't discriminate against someone on the basis of their gender identity. That was the Supreme Court ruling. You remember that? It was a month or so ago.
Yeah, we were actually discussing that, and you made a really good point about the fact that we don't actually have to change legislation as long as the language changes.
So when they change definitions.
Disturbing. Yeah, exactly.
Well, so the Supreme Court ruled that if you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, gender identity and orientation are rooted in your biological sex. Therefore, they are protected as well. So now here's what might happen. Or I don't want to say might. The Spotify employees, just like the New York Times employees, they're doing the same thing. So maybe we'll see.
I would say if you're looking for a job, apply at Spotify right now.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I hear what you're saying. It drives me crazy, though, because this is something that happens in the creative world so often, and I have not worked anywhere near the mainstream creative world, but I have a number of friends who have. And whenever you work on a property that's been acquired, there's always this tension between the people who have acquired the property and the people who originally created it, because no one can ever buy something and then just let the creator do it the way that they were originally doing it. No one can ever see that something is successful and say, this guy knows what he's doing, I'm going to let him run the show because he was doing it fine before I came along. It would be smart for me to just let him continue and take a little piece of this so I can enrich myself. Never. They have to change it. It's so prideful and ridiculous, and they screw themselves because they end up making less money in the long run when they ruin it.
Yes, a lot of times, but it's about fitting that into. So they have a jigsaw puzzle, and they take this piece and they start carving it to fit the mold, and they remove the good
I've done
things
that
about
before when I was a stupid kid.
Forcing jigsaw pieces.
Yeah, like I cut it into the right place because I couldn't find the right piece.
So some of the things I've asked, in relation to what's going on with the Rogan podcast is, the first thing I'll point out is the inherent political danger of Joe Rogan's apology, in that Media Matters for America attacks Joe, saying he's putting out dangerous misinformation because Joe insinuated leftists were starting fires. Joe says something, the left is doing X. The left responds by saying you're a liar. Joe responds by saying, sorry, that wasn't true. But part of it was true. So now Joe's put out misinformation, and when other people point that out, there's no apology. You see what I mean?
I get what you mean.
There's no correcting the record. So what happens is it's once again falling back on playing the left's game when they're not playing by the same rules. They will demand an apology from you. You'll give it. They will never apologize for what they're doing. When the right says the left should apologize for this. Remember when we had the dude put he posted a picture of the guy throwing the Covington kids in a wood chipper?
Oh yeah, who was that?
That whole thing, they refused, the media companies refused to apologize. They settle, some undisclosed number. They won't give you anything at all. So why is anyone giving them anything in return?
Yeah.
Why? I don't understand why it is that Joe would apologize for this, but then not apologize for anything else he's ever said that's been incorrect.
So this comes back to playing their game. We are choosing to play by their rules. And I really hope that Joe does not decide to go through with this and kowtow or anything like that. I hope that he sticks to his guns and stays strong, because he's a very nice guy. He's very common sense. He does not mean anyone any harm. I know for sure. You can watch hours
but
and hours
he's done it.
What do you mean?
He did apologize already.
Oh, yeah.
And the apology was incorrect. I know. I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse because I've talked about it so many times, but it's in just in the context of they're continually putting pressure on him to try and get him to make concessions.
Yes, but I think that is a separate issue, because the whole idea of editing or removing his podcasts is just completely insane, and I hope that he doesn't kowtow to that. I hope that he puts
It's not about what he wants.
Me too.
It doesn't matter what he says. This is what people don't understand. They're saying, I think it was James Lindsay who tweeted, if they think they're going to get away with this, they don't know who Joe Rogan is. And it's like, perhaps if you trust that he did a good job with his legal contract, his contract in terms of the licensing deal with Spotify, for sure. But if it's just a licensing deal, then is Spotify under any obligation to actually post any of these podcasts?
I don't know, man. I would have to see the contract. It's pretty.
I would be surprised, based on the contracts I've dealt with, if there was a provision saying, if I make the content, you must publish it.
Wow.
No, every licensing deal.
Bought him and silenced him.
That's called golden handcuffs.
Horrific.
It's called golden handcuffs. They do it all the time. That's why I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if Joe actually knew and didn't fall into these traps. But every licensing deal I've seen does not have an obligation for licensing. They say, we're going to license your content. Here's how much we'll pay you. You say, okay.
That's freaky.
That's normal. And so I'd imagine with an exclusive contract, to me, look, he's the biggest podcast in the world. I'm sure they went through all these contracts with a fine tooth comb and like they're probably some of the craziest contracts in the world. But the deals that I've negotiated where I've demanded guarantees have just collapsed. When I say, no, I want to guarantee that you're actually going to be working on this. And they say, well, we can't guarantee that because, but have a nice day.
No, I hear you.
I'm not going to give away my content and then have it just disappear into a dark corner in exchange for money. I don't care. I like the content more than I care about the money.
Yeah, good for you.
You give me a cell phone and I'll sit in the middle of the woods and just blabble on for a million years. I can live in a hut or go down by the river and just go fishing and mind my own business. But there are a lot of people fall into these traps. I've had a bunch of contracts offered to me over the past couple of years that have been laughable. There's like a really big podcasting network that sent me a contract that basically said, in very sneaky terms, I would give them 100% ownership of all of my platform and content and everything.
And then they make you feel like they're doing that you're wrong for
exactly
that they're doing you a favor too.
And when I responded with, I read it, I said, please send me the real contract. And they said, this is the normal boilerplate, blah, blah. And I said, I said, no, this contract signs over the ownership of my business, which I will not do. If you like to talk about a purchase, it's different from a licensing agreement. And they said, it's normal. This is what lawyers are for. And my response was essentially a few words longer than F you. Yeah. If you think I'm going to drop thousands of dollars on a lawyer because you're trying to rip me off, you can go have a nice day. I don't care. Like I said, I'll go down in the woods and film myself on an iPhone and be like, burp, burp, burp. I don't need this. I don't need you. I'm not going to deal with this. But these pitfalls exist and they're all over the place. And I have seen some really, really clever ones. What they could do things in a contract where they say something like, this following provision only applies to a C-grade manager, of a company and will not pertain specifically to high-ranking officials X, Y, and Z, and then say content produced by these people will be property of this company. Then you go 7 pages down and it'll say, for all intents and purposes, a C-level manager could include this, that, and this. C section 7B. You go 7 pages away and then guess what? You are a C-level manager. You see how they do it? They can say, don't worry, we're not taking your stuff. It just says we're taking C-level manager stuff, like employees, because they work for us, right? Then 10 pages later, you find out that means you. Those are the tricks they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's so evil, but it's hilarious because the entire purpose of a contract is so you can have some clear agreement on paper that both parties have consented to. But obviously, once lawyers get involved, everyone's just trying to screw the other person over. Not all the time, but they make it much easier for you to do that if you have all the tricky legal language at your disposal.
I won't sign anything.
I don't blame you.
I always say, give me one sheet of paper that explains what it is.
Yes, exactly. That's what it has to be.
One sheet, and they're like, there's no way. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. Like I've done like sponsorship things where it's like they give me this like 10-page thing, and I was like, you want me to shout you out and you want me to sign that? And they're like, don't worry. It's no, it isn't. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. I'm not doing it.
What do they say? Do they insist that you sign it and go away? Or do they go like, oh, well, if you're not going to sign it, we'll just do the sponsorship anyway, or we'll give you something simpler?
I'll tell you what. A lot of the times, I'm a bit too short with a lot of people.
You make it clear that there's no relationship there.
I straight up say, if you come to me and try to screw me, I will kick you out the door without a moment's notice. There's no second chance. You bring me a contract and you give me bunk BS, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, get out of my building now and never come back. You're out. And I'll tell you this. I often advise people there's no such thing as no in business, only terms. So if someone comes to you and they give you bad terms, you don't say no, you say improve the terms. At a certain point, however, I'm sick and tired of them constantly flinging garbage at me, assuming I'm too stupid to realize how to run a business.
Yeah.
These people think they can get away with it. Look at what Kanye West was tweeting about. I don't know if you saw this stuff where he talks about the labels ripping people off. That's what it is. especially with young people. They probably assume like, a lot of these contracts in the past few years, I'm like in my late 20s, I'm in my early 30s, and they're like, we're going to take everything you own. I'm like, you think I'm a moron, don't you? You think you can come up to someone who's like, late 20s, early 30s, and they're not smart enough. They haven't had enough experience. You waste my time and you waste my money. I will not do business with you.
People do make those deals, though. That's the sad thing. That's why they keep trying. They know that they have success in that.
And
exactly.
The reason why you just say no and stop negotiating is because you don't have time. Like once you get to a certain level of you get to negotiations extensive.
So the way I have to explain it to people is, I'll ask you this, because I don't think I've ever asked you this before. If your phone rang right now while we're sitting here, and it was McDonald's, and you were like, what is this? And they said, Seamus, we want you to be a cashier at the McDonald's location in Washington, Central D.C.,
Yes, no conditions. I don't even care.
Yes, do it.
Yeah.
But what would you really say if you've got a call right now from McDonald's and said, we want you to be a cashier?
I'd say, God bless you, but I have other things that I'm invested in right now that I find more rewarding than that position would probably be for me at this point in time.
So to be fair, for you, that's probably, you have your own business, you've got a successful channel. What I tell people when they're trying to get started in life and they're trying to find jobs, the correct answer is most people say no. Like most people I know of college degrees, they're like, I would not know. I'd say no, of course. That's the wrong answer. The correct answer is?
How much money?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And so then they always respond with, oh, but they're not going to pay me. So who cares? Then you don't take a job you didn't want in the first place.
Yeah.
So if they call you and say, we want you to be a cashier, you say, I want $50 an hour. And when they say, we do not pay that much, well, thank you for your time. You have a nice day. Yeah. End of story.
I mean, because if McDonald's is calling me, right, I've got all the power here.
Well,
they reached out to me.
That's a good point.
So I could ask for more money. I figured I could negotiate for a little more.
Man,
but it's I love what I'm doing.
You must really want me to be a cashier. You know it. We just need that smile.
This is so
increased sales.
Spotify bought Joe Rogan to put gold handcuffs on him. McDonald's wants to put gold handcuffs on me by making me a cashier.
You got to read the contract.
I don't think they bought him and put golden handcuffs on him.
No, I'm being facetious. I have no idea what that situation is.
I love Joe, man, and his
he's
work
awesome.
is so important, I think.
So it's worrying then when you see stories like this, and here's why I'm like, I was begrudgingly saying like, I don't really want to talk about it because it feels very tabloidy.
Yeah.
Talking about people does kind of
for sure, especially like because I've talked about him now I think 4 times in reference to a lot of the same things. But the issue is that he's at the top of the pyramid when it comes to podcasting,
right?
And what happens to his show is going to infect politics, culture, and the podcasting world. So the people listening, the work we do,
there's actually like precedent for them to be like, this is upsetting my rights because I have to see offensive stuff. That's gross.
Vice had something called a non-traditional workplace agreement that you had to sign when you got hired there. This was an agreement that said you recognize that, I had to sign it. In this workplace, you will encounter content like this, like that, whatever, and you acknowledge you will not take issue. As a media company, we do these things. And Vice was basically forced to remove that because leftist activists started claiming it was used to allow the men at the company to sexually assault women, which is ridiculous. So when all of these stories of like assault started coming out from the higher ranking Vice people, then all of a sudden we started hearing these stories. Did you know they have a non-traditional workplace agreement that says these things? And it got leaked online and everybody read it. Vice had people sign that to prevent them from saying, I walked into the workplace and saw, a porn video playing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you work for a magazine and this is a part of the job. You're like, these are the kind of content you engage with. Sometimes you're going to hear, like when Vice goes to the Middle East and you hear someone yelling like racial and ethnic slurs about their rival tribe or country, people would get triggered or angry by it. Or what about when Vice went and interviewed Klansmen and they started saying a whole bunch of racist things? So people are going to say, the fact that they make me have to edit this when it was derogatory about me, I believe is a violation of my rights as discrimination.
Wow.
So I don't know exactly what would happen in that capacity, but that is why you end up with non-traditional workplace agreements.
Yeah, we had something similar at Mines. I mean, I think I had to actually write that in to my own job because I would witness, I was like an admin at Mines and I would see like the boost console coming through and it was just terrifying. Some visceral, like the Christchurch shooting. I saw so many,
that's rough.
20 times of like in the Doom, it was like with the video game overlay, like a first person shooter gunning women in the head. And like,
that's just horrible.
It changed me and I had to deal, but I just quit the job. I'm not going to like...
Well, that's traumatic. It was shocking.
Yeah, that's traumatic. That's not hearing a discussion about whether or not children should be given hormones.
I couldn't tell the platform to not host it. it's not, the platform is a platform. It's not a publisher. Is Spotify a publisher or a platform?
They're a publisher.
Well, that's different.
Yeah, you have to get permission to post. So, look, I'm not saying I know for sure that will happen, but I throw it back to things like the non-traditional workplace agreement advice and how the New York Times employees accused New York Times of being racist for allowing an article about riots that are predominantly white.
What? Wait,
so
this
white
happened?
Yes. So white people are rioting. So Tom Cotton says, send in the military and stop the riots. So the New York Times employee says, that's racist. And the New York Times is endangering black bodies or something like that.
Oh, my goodness.
That's what their claim. And then it worked. The editor from the opinion page had to resign.
They actually pulled the article and the guy resigned.
I don't know if they pulled it, but they put a whole bunch of like apologies and explanations. And we're trying to desperately be like, oh, please don't cancel your subscription.
Yeah.
Spineless. You know what I would do? If I had a company like the New York Times and I was losing subscribers, my bottom line was faltering, I'd sit back, put my feet up, light a cigar, and be like, we're going down with the ship, boys. It's going to be a fun ride.
Oh, my goodness. Just publish anything you want at the New York Times?
I'd be like...
They already do.
Ladies and gentlemen, crack the cigar. I'd be like, the ship is going down. I'm going down with it. I have golden parachutes prepared, severance packages for all of you if you'd like to go, or you can hang out and we can watch and see what happens.
And then the guys who don't have golden parachutes just stand there and play the violin as the ship sinks. Yeah.
Play the violin.
Yeah.
I would rather watch the ship sink than get taken over by cultists. I'm the kind of guy, if I'm on my ship, I got my 17th century frigate or galleon or whatever, and I'm transporting my important cargo and pirates come, I'm going to be like, scuttle the ship and burn it to the ground before I give it to these people. You want to steal my ship? You want to board, kill my people and take over? Nope. We're burning it to the ground before we let you have it.
So
the New York Times doesn't do that, though.
Yeah, I guess the question is, how much is the New York Times being... I mean, obviously there's some coercion there because they published the article of their own free will and then took it down, but they've always been to the left. It's not as if these are right-wingers coming in and forcing them to say things that would contradict their previously held biases.
That's the issue. That's like the joke I was making where in like 2030 you see the New York Times covered in vines and you go in and there's journalists like all like haggard like zombies because their desperation to latch on to being left, they can never give it up.
That's fair.
So I was talking to a friend of mine and I was explaining the left has gone insane. And I said, have you ever stopped to consider how weird it is that Barack Obama was called deporter-in-chief and his vice president, right alongside with him, created the cages in Homestead, Florida. And then 4 years later, all of a sudden, he's for decriminalizing border crossings, a moratorium on deportations. How in 4 years did he jump so far on that issue? Yeah. The left has been radicalized. Yeah. And moderates and conservatives are in a very similar space they've been for the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the right wing has changed to some extent, but the worst thing you could commit yourself to is being left wing because that's always going to change. I think, unfortunately, presently, the right wing has more or less become this very loose association with people who have vaguely similar views about the economy, and then socially, the views are all over the board. So we don't have a very strong right wing or conservative movement currently. But I think we need to develop something much more robust and, as I said earlier, rooted in Catholicism.
In 2006, the right wing was pro-war. Go kill, get the oil.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Get the
that's
oil.
Also true.
Halliburton.
Yeah, the right has changed so much, and it's really depressing. And it's funny, though, because what the right was in like 2006, 2007, around that time during the Bush era, was mostly neoconservative. And Trump has sort of changed that and actually brought it back to something a little more old school, not entirely because he's very socially liberal, but his more like populist economic policies and his attitudes towards issues being based on what he thinks are best for like working people is, I think, like a more traditional version of conservatism than we've had in this country, though.
And these Black Lives Matter are neoliberals. They're not liberals. Liberalism is good in balance.
Yeah, that's another discussion.
This weird aberration of liberalism is
not. That's why people started saying classical liberalism to protect what it means to be a legit OG.
Let's just call them neoliberals and call classical liberals liberals.
I prefer cultists or
cultist crazy works. People, noisemakers. Well, this is the thing too.
Rabble.
What does classical liberal mean either? Because often, it's like sometimes classically liberal is made to refer specifically to, or is used to refer specifically to Enlightenment values. But I think more recently, people who would have been considered liberal 10 years ago, but now are considered moderate, call themselves claessically liberal.
They're wrong.
They don't line up with us. Okay, good. I'm on the same page as you, but I've noticed many people using the phrase that way, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Because
and also what the proper label is for those people.
If you're talking about people who were liberal 10 years ago, you're talking about social liberals.
Yeah, like sock dems maybe.
So No,
Not necessarily, because wouldn't you say the liberals 10 years ago probably were in favor of like universal health care
that
and
was me.
expanding
They were.
government power? Yeah.
Well, Obama was.
Okay, so kind of like sock Dems.
Social liberalism is almost identical to classical liberalism, but it leans more towards solving social issues with government.
Yeah.
It's not extreme, it's not far left, it's center left. So it's basically like classical liberals are like, I don't know, I lean more towards a free market solution. And social liberal is, yeah, but some of these things can't be solved by a free market. And then we hold hands and we sing songs and we compromise because you're like standing next to each other. What they've become is like, they're not liberal at all. So I've heard a lot of people say, I used to be a liberal. I guess I'm a classical in the sense.
Yeah.
No. You're talking about John Locke. You're talking about what is
Exactly.
essentially a very libertarian position in the U.S.
Yes.
You want to say something?
Oh, I used to be
You're like,
social democrat, socially liberal. I was
Well,
anti-gun. I don't really need to go into
social democrat is typically a reference to a stronger welfare state.
Yeah,
it used to
exactly.
be like that.
But
then,
social liberal isn't.
Because like
oh, interesting.
a social democrat is not a person who would necessarily say that the state needs to seize ownership of the means of production and return that to the people. They believe in a market economy. They just want it to be really strongly regulated, and they want for there to be a very robust welfare state.
Definitely. If you look at like Vanderbilt and his use of the railroads in the 1800s, he strangled New York City. He had the only rail line in and out of New York, and he just said one day, you know what? Screw you, New York.
I've heard crazy stories of modern day versions of that with internet. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.